Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Malone Bailey's official podcast, Everybody Counts. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Carolina Hukategi from the recruiting department at Malone Bailey. Hopefully this isn't your first time tuning in, but if it is, welcome. Our podcast, Everybody Counts, features various perspectives on a variety of topics, from the latest SEC and FASB updates to discussions on recruiting, retention, and more. Everybody Counts explores trends and hot topics that affect us and those in our business. Tune in to hear from partners and staff alike. The conversation is versatile and everybody's input counts. The focus of today's conversation is on the new QC 1000 standard titled A Firm's System of Quality Control. I'm delighted to be joined today by Alan Delaney, partner at Malone Bailey. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you for having me, Carolina.
Absolutely, Alan. Now, before we jump into today's topic, could you share a little bit about yourself with our listeners?
Sure, I can do that. So I've been at Malone Bailey since 2011, primarily in the QC partner role for that duration. Prior to that, I was actually at the PCOB. Spent about a year and a half over there doing inspections for them. And then prior to that, large bulk of my career was at one of the big four, PwC, where I spent 13 years over there.
Wow, a great career, lots of knowledge. Wonderful to have you here, especially to share on this topic with us. And let's jump right in. As I mentioned a little earlier, today's discussion focuses on the new QC 1000 standard, a major topic was discussed at the 2024 AICPA and CIMA conference. Now, for listeners who may not be deeply familiar, can you give us a brief overview on the QC 1000?
Sure. Since we're only talking about QC 1000 today, I might just refer to it as the standard, but at some point. So QC 1000 itself is a new quality control standard. It is adopted by the PCOB and aimed at significantly improving the quality control systems of registered public accounting firms. The goal is to protect investors by ensuring that firms consistently produce accurate and independent reports. So this new standard, which is an integrated risk-based standard, focuses on identifying and managing risks specific to each firm. It sets mandatory quality objectives and processes for all firms, regardless of size or complexity. The PCOB developed this standard based on their inspections and investigations to address areas that are needing improvement. For clarity, there are two distinct components to the standard I'd like to highlight. One that focuses on the design, implementation, and documentation aspects, and the other that addresses the evaluation and reporting aspects. All registered firms must comply with that first component, which is on the design, while only the registered firms that perform audits under PCOB standards will need to comply with both aspects.
Thanks, that's a great overview for us. You mentioned it's a risk-based standard. Could you elaborate on what that means for audit firms compared to the current quality control requirements?
Sure. So the new risk-based approach means that instead of solely relying on a set of prescribed rules, firms must now be required to proactively identify and manage the specific risks associated with each of their own practices. This requires a deep understanding of a firm's unique circumstances, including its size, complexity, and the type of engagements it undertakes. QC 1000 sets mandatory quality objectives in areas like governance, ethics, engagement performance, and monitoring.
Okay, that makes sense, focusing on the foundational elements. Now, let's talk about the emphasis on governance. What are the key changes this new QC 1000 brings in terms of firm leadership and accountability?
So the standard emphasizes strong governance and clear accountability. It requires firms to assign specific individuals to be responsible for the quality control system. These roles cannot be shared, although one person can hold multiple roles depending on the firm's size and structure. Regardless of the firm's structure, though, the individual that's responsible for the system of quality control must ultimately bear full responsibility. This person's identity and responsibilities must be clearly documented.
That clear assignment of responsibility seems crucial. But what about the risk assessment and monitoring aspects? How are those enhanced under this new standard?
So the standard enhances risk assessment by requiring firms to identify and assess quality risks annually, then create responses. This is an ongoing process. Firms must monitor both engagement deficiencies, which are those things that are non-compliance on specific audits, and then also the QC system deficiencies, which are more related to problems within the quality control system itself, and then address all of those promptly.
All right, so these changes in risk assessment and monitoring appear to create a much more dynamic quality control environment. So now let's talk about the new annual evaluation and reporting requirement. This seems like a significant addition.
Yes, it is. So the standard requires firms to evaluate their QC systems annually with a due date of September 30th each year, and then report those results, which would include any unresolved issues, which is to be reported on a new non-public PCOB form that's called Form QC. And that form is due by November 30th of each year. This adds accountability and helps the PCOB with its oversight.
I see. And the introduction of a non-public reporting form, that's interesting. What's the rationale behind keeping it non-public?
So the PCOB acknowledges that there's a desire for public information on audit quality, but notes certain legal constraints under Sarbanes-Oxley. They believe that firms may report more fully and candidly if the information on Form QC is kept non-public, which would foster better remediation efforts and PCOB oversight. However, it's important to note that PCOB may use Form QC information in inspection or enforcement contexts, which could result in disclosure as part of a public disciplinary proceeding.
And for larger firms, there's also a mention of an external quality control function, EQCF. Could you explain what that one entails?
Yes. For larger firms, specifically those issuing audit reports for more than 100 issuers during the prior calendar year, the standard requires a EQCF. This function includes individuals who are not principals or employees of the firm, and they have no relationship that could affect their independent judgment. The EQCF evaluates significant judgments and conclusions made by the firm regarding its QC system, which would add an extra layer of external scrutiny.
Sounds like a significant enhancement for oversight of the largest firms. What about for the ethics and independence requirements under this new standard?
Yeah, so the standard sets clear guidelines for ethics and independence. It emphasizes identifying matters requiring consultation. For firms auditing over 100 issuers, there's a requirement to maintain and communicate a list of restricted entities monthly and have an automated process for identifying financial interests. These requirements apply based on existing definitions under ethics and independence rules.
And for the documentation, which we always know is a critical and crucial aspect of auditing, what are the key changes we can expect in the documentation requirements?
So the standard requires more detailed documentation. it must be detailed enough for firm personnel and external auditors to understand the QC system design, implementation, and operation. This includes documenting lines of responsibility and supervision. Firms must complete initial documentation of their QC system by December 15th, 2025, and maintain it on an ongoing basis thereafter. This level of detail is necessary for PCOB inspections.
Seems like the standard also introduces some new terminology as well. Are there any key terms our listeners should be aware of?
Yes, there are a few important new terms. One is engagement deficiency, which refers to non-compliance on specific audits, while QC deficiency denotes issues within the quality control system itself. A particularly critical term is major QC deficiency, which is defined as a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies that severely reduces the likelihood that the firm will achieve one or more of its quality objectives. Understanding these definitions is crucial for interpreting and implementing the standard.
As you know very well, Alan, given the diverse landscape of PCOB registered firms, scalability is always a concern. How will this new standard address the varying sizes and complexities of firms?
So it's designed to be scalable due to its risk-based nature. Firms can tailor their quality responses based on their specific circumstances and risks. This allows smaller firms to scale down their responses appropriately. As mentioned earlier, the standard also allows an individual to hold multiple QC oversight roles. Lastly, the firm may include some non-PCOB audits and monitoring activities for its QC systems as appropriate. For example, firms with a limited number of PCOB audits, maybe they have just 5 or fewer for the year, could expand their inspection program to include non-PCOB audits for a broader assessment of engagement activities. This would help firms to inspect the completed files of each engagement partner on a cyclical basis, say every 3 years.
Interesting. Now, before we wrap up, can you remind us when this new QC will go into effect?
Yes. So the effective date for the standard is December 15th, 2025. This extended time frame is intended to provide firms with sufficient time to understand the new requirements and prepare for implementation.
That's a very important date to keep in mind. Alan, thank you so much for providing such a comprehensive and insightful overview on the PCOB's new QC 1000 standard. Your expertise has truly helped clarify these significant changes for our listeners.
Yeah, it was my pleasure.
You can find this information on our website under resources. You can also find more information on AICPA.com, PCAOBUS.org, and SEC.gov. Well, that concludes all my questions for now. Thank you so much, Alan, for taking the time to speak with me today on this topic. Now, before we conclude today's podcast, we want to switch gears real quick and play a little game we like to play on our podcast called This or That. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and you'll choose which you prefer. All right, ready?
Yes.
Okay. So, sweet or salty?
Salty.
Dog or cat?
Cat.
Beach vacation or camping adventure?
Camping adventure.
Nice. Thank you again for your helpful information today. I'm very appreciative of you taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with me, Alan. I had a great time talking with you, and to everyone listening, we appreciate you listening in and invite you to check out our website, www.malonebailey.com, for more information about public company audit services, as well as some other useful resources. Thanks again for listening.